Ava Johnson sat at the long dining table, her hands resting quietly on her lap as her family carried on their usual chatter. The room was grand, with crystal glasses catching the soft light of the chandelier above, but the atmosphere felt heavy. For Ava, dinners like this were never about family warmth, they were about appearances. Her parents, Charles and Elaine, liked to believe they were a picture-perfect family, but beneath the polished silverware and expensive wine, sharp words always waited. At 28, Ava had worked harder than anyone at that table, yet she was treated as if she were the black sheep. Elaine, her mother, looked at her with the same cool disapproval she always carried. Her father stayed mostly quiet, though his silence often felt like agreement with Elaine's opinions. Ava's older siblings, Mark and Sophia, filled the space with their voices, Mark boasting about his law cases, Sophia sharing stories of her social events. And then there was Ava, listening, waiting, holding on to the news she thought might finally make them proud. When the moment came, she lifted her head and said, "I have something to share." The table grew quiet, eyes turning toward her. Ava took a breath, steadying her voice. "My company just closed a deal. We've been acquired by an international firm. It's worth $200 million. She expected at least a flicker of surprise or happiness. Instead, Mark gave a short laugh, shaking his head. There she goes again, trying to impress everyone with her little startup stories. Sophia smirked, swirling her wine glass. "Money doesn't buy class, Ava. You can't just buy your way into respect." Ava's chest tightened. She turned to her parents, hoping for something different. But Elaine leaned back, her expression sharper than ever. "You think this makes you better than us? You've become too ambitious. Too loud. You're not one of us anymore." The words cut deeper than any knife. Ava pressed her lips together, holding back the sting of tears. She had dreamed of this moment, dreamed of them finally seeing her, acknowledging her. But instead, they made her feel smaller than ever. Then Elaine's voice came again, colder this time. "Step away from us. You don't belong at this table." The room fell silent. Even Mark and Sophia seemed startled by the finality of it. Ava felt her heart pound, but she did not break. Instead of arguing or begging, she pushed her chair back and stood. Her voice was steady, almost gentle, as she whispered, "Goodbye." Without another glance, she walked out of the dining room, her heels clicking against the marble floor. The family sat frozen, unsure if she would come back. But when the sound of engines roared outside, they rushed to the window. There, just beyond the estate, a sleek private jet waited, its lights glowing against the night. They watched in shock as Ava climbed the steps and disappeared inside. The engines thundered louder, the ground trembling slightly beneath their feet. No one spoke. The truth hung in the air, heavier than anything that had been said at dinner. Ava was no longer just the overlooked child. She was someone entirely different. And as the jet lifted from the ground, carrying her into the night sky, one question lingered in the minds of everyone who had witnessed it. How did she get here? And why would her own family cast her out? Ava was the youngest of 3 siblings, and from the very beginning, she was the one most often overlooked. While her brother Mark and sister Sophia were praised for everything they did, Ava was the quiet child in the corner, left to figure things out on her own. Her father, Charles, cared deeply about how the family looked to outsiders. To him, success meant expensive suits, a powerful job title, and being seen at the right places. Her mother, Elaine, was even stricter, controlling, proud, and always reminding her children that they came from a special family. She believed there was only one right way to live: follow the family rules, marry into wealth, and never step outside their circle. Mark quickly became his father's pride. As a lawyer, he carried himself with arrogance, always reminding Ava that she was beneath him. Sophia was the golden child, adored by Elaine for her beauty and her charm. She could do no wrong in their mother's eyes. Together, the 2 siblings often laughed at Ava, treating her as if she were strange for liking books more than parties, or for asking questions that didn't fit into the polished picture their parents wanted. Ava never fit the mold her family created. She was bookish, independent, and curious about the world beyond the gates of their estate. While her siblings were chauffeured to school in luxury cars, Ava preferred to walk, headphones in her ears, dreaming of building something that belonged only to her. This difference made her an outsider in her own home. She was often pushed aside, told she was too different, and scolded for not behaving like a proper Johnson. When it came time for college, the gap between Ava and her siblings grew even wider. Mark and Sophia had their tuition, rent, and luxuries paid for without question. Ava, however, was left to manage on her own. She applied for scholarships, worked long hours at night, and studied until her eyes ached. There were days when she barely slept, balancing work at a coffee shop with lectures and endless assignments. She struggled, but she never gave up. That fight, the constant need to prove herself, became the fire that shaped her. Years later, Ava stood on her own 2 feet. She had founded a small tech startup, working from her cramped apartment with nothing more than determination and borrowed laptops. What began as a tiny project soon grew into something larger. Investors noticed her drive, clients trusted her vision, and slowly, she built a company that no one could ignore. By 28, Ava was not just surviving, she was thriving. She had become the CEO of a growing company, leading a team of young innovators who believed in her. Yet despite all of this, her family still saw her as the odd one out. Charles waved off her work as a little side project. Elaine said she was too unconventional, and warned her that she would embarrass the family with her wild ambitions. Mark mocked her during gatherings, calling her the startup girl, while Sophia suggested that Ava had only gotten lucky. No matter how many awards she won, or how many business magazines featured her, the Johnsons dismissed her as if her success meant nothing. For Ava, this was the hardest truth to carry. Deep inside, she still longed for her family's approval. She wanted her mother to smile at her with pride, her father to finally see her as an equal, and her siblings to treat her with respect instead of contempt. But each time she reached out, she was reminded that she would never truly belong in their world. The more successful she became, the deeper the rift grew. Instead of celebrating her achievements, her family seemed threatened by them. They called her too ambitious, as though her dreams were something shameful. They accused her of thinking she was better than them, when all she ever wanted was to be seen, to be loved the same way Mark and Sophia were. It was a painful cycle. The harder Ava worked, the more distant her family became. She stood at the height of success, yet in the quiet of her own thoughts, she often felt the same as she did when she was a child, overlooked, unwanted, and yearning for acceptance. This was her struggle. Ava had everything she once dreamed of: wealth, recognition, independence. But without her family's love, the victory often felt hollow. She was forced to face the truth she had been avoiding her whole life. No matter what she achieved, they might never give her the approval she craved. And in that realization lay the stakes. If she could not let go of that longing, it would always weigh her down. At a family function weeks before the dinner, Ava arrived with quiet hope. She had told herself that maybe, just maybe, things were getting better. The Johnson estate was filled with guests, laughter, and the sound of glasses clinking. To outsiders, the Johnson family looked perfect, polished, rich, untouchable. But Ava had learned long ago that appearances could lie. She mingled politely, keeping her smile steady, until she overheard something that made her heart freeze. In a corner of the room, Mark and Sophia were speaking in low voices with their parents. Ava wasn't meant to hear it, but she did. "Mother, father," Mark was saying, his voice sharp with authority. "We need to be practical. Ava doesn't belong in the trust. She's reckless, unpredictable. If she's included, she could ruin the Johnson name." Sophia nodded in agreement, her voice sweet but poisonous. "She's different from us. Her little company might seem impressive now, but what if it collapses? What if she drags our name through the mud? People already whisper about how unconventional she is." Elaine sighed, as if this was something she had already considered. Charles simply looked thoughtful, his silence louder than words. Ava stood frozen just a few feet away, her heart pounding. She hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but now she couldn't move. Her own siblings, her own blood, were plotting to cut her out of the family trust. Not because she had failed, but because she had succeeded in a way they didn't approve of. Gathering her courage, Ava stepped forward. Her voice shook, but her words were clear. "So this is what you think of me? Reckless? A danger to the family?" All 4 of them turned, startled by her sudden presence. Mark recovered first, rolling his eyes. "Ava, don't be dramatic. We're only looking out for the family reputation." Sophia crossed her arms, tilting her head. "You have your own thing going. Why would you even care about the trust?" Ava looked at her parents, searching their faces for denial, for some sign that they would defend her. But Elaine only gave a cold smile. Your brother and sister aren't wrong. You've chosen a different path, Ava. You don't need us. You have your little company. The words felt like a slap. Ava tried to steady her breathing, but her chest felt tight. So that's it? After everything I've done, you would just push me out? As if I don't belong to this family. Charles finally spoke, his voice calm but dismissive. We're not pushing you out. We're simply recognizing reality. You've built your own life. Isn't that what you wanted? Ava stared at them, unable to believe what she was hearing. She had worked night after night, fought against every obstacle, not only for herself but in the hope that one day her family would be proud. And now, instead of pride, they were shutting her out, cutting her off as though she were a stranger. Something broke inside her that night. It wasn't just the betrayal of being excluded from the trust. It was the realization that her family had never truly wanted her to succeed. They wanted her silent, obedient, and invisible. The more she achieved, the more they saw her as a threat. She left the function early, her smile gone, her steps heavy. In the quiet of her car, she let herself cry, not out of weakness, but out of grief. She wasn't losing money or property. She was losing the dream of ever being accepted as one of them. But even in the middle of her heartbreak, another thought began to take shape. If her family would never see her worth, she would have to show it to herself. In the days that followed, Ava made a choice. She would attend the upcoming family dinner. Not to beg, not to argue, but to make one last attempt at reconciliation. A part of her still hoped that if she could prove her success, if she could show them just how far she had come, they might finally open their hearts. She prepared carefully, holding on to the news she had been saving, the biggest success of her career. This was her final chance to stand before them, not as the overlooked child, but as the woman she had become. What she didn't know was that this dinner would not bring her closer to her family. It would change everything forever. The dinner becomes the battleground. The table was beautifully set, silver shining under the chandelier, crystal glasses lined neatly, and fine food laid out by the servants. To anyone else, it would have looked like the picture of family unity. But to Ava, every seat at that table felt like a wall against her. She had rehearsed what she wanted to say all day. Her heart beat quickly, but she forced herself to stay calm. This was her last chance, her final attempt to show them she wasn't the forgotten child they always made her feel like. Halfway through the meal, when the clinking of forks and chatter softened, Ava cleared her throat. I have some news, she began, her voice steady though her hands trembled under the table. Everyone looked at her, waiting. My company has been acquired by one of the biggest global firms. The deal closed last week. It's worth $200 million. For a moment, silence hung heavy. Ava waited for the smiles, the congratulations, maybe even pride. But instead Mark chuckled, the sound low and mocking. There she goes again, he said, shaking his head. Always trying to prove she's something more than she is. Startup nonsense. Sophia smirked, leaning back in her chair. 200 million? Please, Ava. Do you expect us to believe you earned respect just like that? You probably charmed your way into it. Money doesn't mean people actually respect you. Ava's chest tightened. She looked to her father, searching for a sign of approval. But Charles only adjusted his napkin, his face unreadable. Then Elaine spoke, her tone sharp and cutting. Money doesn't make you one of us, Ava. Blood does. And frankly, you've distanced yourself from this family for years. You left us behind. The words stung like fire. Ava wanted to shout that she hadn't left them. They had left her, piece by piece, every time they laughed at her dreams, every time they dismissed her struggles. But she stayed quiet, her lips pressed tight. She tried again, her voice softer this time. I thought you'd be proud. I built this with nothing. I worked nights, I sacrificed. Mark cut her off with a laugh. Don't act like you're some hero. You just got lucky. Companies rise and fall every day. Yours will too. Sophia leaned in, her tone dripping with fake sweetness. Honestly, Ava, you don't look like you belong in those business magazines. It's almost embarrassing. People must think you're trying too hard. The words piled on top of her like stones, each one heavier than the last. Ava sat frozen, her fork untouched, her appetite gone. She realized then that no matter what she achieved, no matter how far she climbed, It would never be enough for them. Her mother's eyes narrowed, studying her like a judge passing sentence. You sit there flaunting numbers, thinking success makes you worthy. But it doesn't. You've always been different. Too much. Too ambitious. You'll never understand what it means to be a Johnson. The room grew quieter, the tension sharp enough to cut. Ava could hear her own heartbeat, feel the heat rising in her chest. 1,000 words burned on her tongue, begging to be spoken. She wanted to scream that she had fought harder than any of them, that while they were spoon-fed luxury, she built her life from scratch. She wanted to remind them that it was her determination, not luck, that had carried her this far. But deep inside, another truth pressed harder. Nothing she said would change their minds. She could beg, she could shout, she could prove her worth in every possible way, and still, they would look at her the same. The outsider, the misfit, the one who didn't belong. Her silence spoke louder than her words ever could. She sat straight, her face calm though her hands shook under the table. For the first time, she stopped trying to win their approval. She began to see that maybe their acceptance was something she didn't need. Elaine must have sensed it, because her next words carried the final blow. Her voice was cold, final, like the closing of a heavy door. Step away from us. You don't belong at this table. The words echoed in Ava's ears, heavy and unforgiving. The clink of cutlery stopped. Even Mark and Sophia seemed startled by how final their mother's voice sounded. Ava's throat tightened, but she did not cry. She did not beg. Instead, she pushed her chair back slowly, the scrape of wood against the floor filling the silence. She stood, her face calm, her eyes clear. She looked at each of them one last time. Her father's empty silence, her siblings' smirks, her mother's cold glare. Inside her heart, the battle raged, one side aching for their love, the other whispering that she no longer needed it, that she had her own place in the world, that maybe her true family was the one she had built herself, with her team, her friends, and her own strength. She took a breath, her voice soft but steady. Goodbye. The room stayed frozen as she turned and walked away. The decision had been made, even if they didn't realize it yet. Ava was done fighting for a seat at their table. Ava stands. Instead of anger, she shows calm strength. The scrape of her chair against the floor is the only sound in the silent room. Her face is steady, her shoulders firm. For years she had cried in silence, begged in her heart for their approval, but not tonight. Tonight something inside her had shifted. Her voice is soft, but every word carries weight. I finally understand. I don't need to fight for a seat at this table. I've built my own. Her family stares at her, speechless. Elaine's lips part, as if to speak, but no words come. Mark frowns, confused. Sophia looks away, almost unsettled. Charles lowers his eyes to his plate, avoiding her completely. Ava does not wait for them to answer. She turns and walks out of the dining room. The echo of her heels on the marble floor grows fainter with each step, leaving behind a silence so heavy that no one dares to break it. The servants near the hallway glance curiously as she passes, but Ava keeps her head high. For the first time in her life, she feels free, not because her family has accepted her, but because she has stopped needing their acceptance. When she steps outside, the night air greets her. But what greets her family, who rush to the windows moments later, is even more shocking. Parked on the private runway just beyond the estate is a sleek, gleaming jet. Its lights glow softly against the darkness, the sound of its engines humming. Elaine gasps from inside the house. Sophia clutches the curtains, disbelief flashing across her face. Is that hers? It is. Ava walks toward the plane with calm, measured steps, her long coat flowing behind her. A small crew waits at the base of the stairs, ready to assist her. This is no rental, no borrowed display. The jet belongs to her. She had bought it quietly months ago, preparing for nights like this. Nights when she needed to step into her future without hesitation. She is not just leaving the estate. She is leaving everything they thought defined her. Inside the house, panic stirs. Mark throws down his napkin and storms out of the dining room. He hurries across the lawn, his shoes crunching against the gravel. Ava, he shouts, his voice sharp with desperation. Ava stops at the bottom of the jet stairs and turns slowly. The lights from the aircraft glow behind her, casting her in a halo of strength. Mark reaches her, his face red. Don't do this. You can't just walk away from the family. Do you even understand what this looks like? If people find out about this, if they see you outshining us, it'll ruin everything. For a moment, Ava studies him. The same brother who once mocked her, laughed at her dreams, and plotted to cut her out of the family trust now stood before her, afraid of being eclipsed. Her voice is calm, sharper than any shout. You already made your choice when you shut the door on me. Mark opens his mouth to reply, but nothing comes. He looks smaller than she has ever seen him, his arrogance stripped away by fear. Ava doesn't wait for more excuses. She turns back to the stairs and climbs, step by steady step. At the top, she pauses only once. Her family stands in the distance, framed by the estate windows and the darkness of the night. Their faces are pale with shock, their pride crumbling in silence. She steps inside the jet. The door closes with a hiss, cutting off the world she is leaving behind. Moments later, the engines roar louder, shaking the ground. The jet begins to move, rolling down the runway. Her family watches helplessly as the plane gathers speed, then lifts into the night sky, a streak of light against the stars. But Ava is not flying away aimlessly. She is on her way to New York, where the next morning she will sign the final papers that will make her the youngest female board member of a Fortune 500 company. She is not just leaving the Johnson family's table. She is stepping into a table of her own making, one the whole world will recognize. Back at the estate, the silence inside the dining room feels like a wound. Elaine sits down heavily, her glass trembling in her hand. Charles keeps his eyes lowered, ashamed. Sophia's smirk has vanished, and Mark lingers outside, staring into the sky as if hoping the jet might turn back. But it won't. Ava is gone, and this time, she is gone for good. In New York, Ava attends the signing ceremony for her new role. The hall is bright with lights, filled with important people in sharp suits and elegant dresses. Cameras flash from every corner as reporters call her name. Ava Johnson. Over here, they shout, trying to capture the perfect picture. She walks across the stage with steady steps, her black suit tailored perfectly, her head held high. A representative from the global firm greets her with a handshake before announcing her position. Today, we welcome Ava Johnson, the youngest woman ever to join the board of a Fortune 500 company. The crowd erupts in applause. Ava smiles, not out of pride alone, but from a deep sense of peace. She takes her seat at the long table, pen in hand, and signs the papers that seal her new role. With every stroke of her signature, she feels the weight of her past lifting away. As the ceremony continues, Ava's thoughts drift for a moment. She remembers the nights she studied under dim lights, working shifts to pay her bills while her siblings enjoyed comfort. She remembers the cruel laughter, the whispers behind her back, the way her mother dismissed her as too ambitious. She remembers the sting of being cut out, the pain of hearing she didn't belong at her own family's table. And yet here she is. Every rejection, every harsh word, every lonely night had built her into the woman the world was now celebrating. The pain had not destroyed her, it had forged her. Reporters push microphones toward her once the signing is done. Ava, how does it feel to reach this level at just 28? One asks. She smiles softly. It feels like the beginning. Success isn't about proving people wrong. It's about proving to yourself that you were right to keep going. There is no mention of her family. She could easily expose them, tell the world how they mocked her, how they tried to shut her out. But she doesn't. She doesn't need revenge. Her success is louder than any insult they ever threw at her. Later, in the quiet of her hotel suite overlooking the city, Ava writes a short message. She doesn't call or argue. She doesn't beg for love anymore. She simply types the words that capture everything she feels. I stepped away. And I stepped up. She sends it to her family group chat, the same one where her siblings once ignored her messages. Then she sets her phone down, pours herself a glass of wine, and watches the city lights sparkle beneath her window. This is her closure. Not the applause, not the cameras, not the title on her nameplate, but the realization that she no longer needs to fight for a place where she isn't wanted. She has built her own place, one filled with respect, achievement, and quiet strength. Her journey has come full circle. She is no longer the overlooked child at the Johnson estate. She is Ava Johnson, leader, fighter, survivor. Not defined by the family who rejected her, but by the life she created out of their rejection. And in that moment, she feels something stronger than victory. She feels free. Back at the family estate, the Johnsons sat in the living room, the television casting bright light across their faces. On the screen, Ava stood at the signing ceremony in New York, cameras flashing as reporters cheered her name. The announcer's voice praised her as the youngest woman to ever join the board of a Fortune 500 company. For once, the Johnson family was silent. Mark shifted uncomfortably, his jaw tight. Sophia's glass of wine trembled slightly in her hand. But it was Elaine, the mother who had always spoken with sharp certainty, who broke the silence. Her voice was quiet, almost broken. "That should have been our moment with her," she whispered, staring at the screen. "She was ours, and we let her go." No one answered. The truth needed no words. Far away, in her new penthouse overlooking the city lights, Ava sat in peace. A glass of wine rested in her hand, the soft hum of the city below filling the quiet room. She didn't need the applause anymore. She didn't need to prove anything to anyone sitting at that estate. She smiled not out of pride, but out of something deeper, peace. For years, she had fought to belong, to earn love that never came. But now she understood. Sometimes family isn't who you're born to. It's what you build for yourself, through resilience, through courage, through refusing to let rejection define you. As she leaned back, watching the night sky, Ava felt lighter than ever before. She wasn't the overlooked child anymore. She was simply Ava, strong, free, and finally home in the life she created. Hey friends, thanks for sticking with me till the end. Don't forget to like, drop a comment, and hit that subscribe button. See you in the next one.